Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we will start. So, our apologies for this very last minute. We had some technical problems, so that's why we are starting late. So, our apologies. Thank you, parents, for joining us in this session. I'm the principal, Mr. Peck, and today's session is about introducing you to our school program. And this is particularly targeted at parents who are interested to register your children into primary one. And most of you are probably in the process of looking out for suitable schools. So you are attending this session to find out whether our school is a suitable school for you. Right, let me continue with the slides. So just to share with everyone that this session will be recorded and it will be uploaded on our school's YouTube site. So if you go into YouTube and you type in Admiralty Primary School, you will be able to find our YouTube channel. And other than this video, which we will upload in a few days' time, we also have other series of other videos that we have been making over the last few years, and we have been parking them on the YouTube sites as well. So do feel free to browse through any of the videos that might be of interest to you, so that you are able to understand in more details about the things that we do in Admiralty Primary School. On top of that, the PowerPoint slides would also be uploaded on our school website in a few days' time. So if you just want to find out details that are in the slides, you do not need to go and view the whole presentation. You can just go to the PowerPoint slide on our school website and look out for the information contained there. For this session, this is a webinar session. And you will see a Q&A function on your menu strip. And that if you have any questions, do type in your questions there. We have a team of teachers and administrative staff with me here today as well. So they will be on the lookout for your questions, and those questions that they are able to answer, they will straight away key in their answers for you so that you can get the information quickly. And those questions that might require more elaborate answers will be left at towards the end of the presentation, and that I will be taking them live at the end of this segment. So do feel free to type in your questions along the way if you have any of them in the course of this presentation. So I'm the principal, and with me I have one vice principal looking after the education, which is the academic part of our schoolwork, Mrs. Joyce Lim. And we have Mr. Amri as our Vice Principal Administration. So he will be looking at the other aspect of school work that includes our finance, our facility management, etc. So the objective of this session, as I've mentioned before, is to familiarize everyone with the stages of primary one registration, and we will be explaining this whole process in particular with reference to our school's context. Next, we will also be sharing with everyone the kind of program that we offer in Admiralty Primary School, so as to help you to see what kind of programs we have and whether our school is your suitable choice for your children. So this, as I said, to help you to make decision. And we also want to say that we encourage all parents to not just look at one school, but to look at several schools, because we will be explaining the whole primary one registration. And if your targeted school is a popular school, there might be a possibility that either you are there could be balloting, and either you are not successful in your balloting, or during the registration stage, you are already out of range, meaning that if there is an expectation that the balloting is going to happen within 1 kilometer, because already those who live around 1 kilometer that have registered the school already exceeded the school's vacancy, Then for those of us who are living outside the 1 kilometer, you might not even have a chance to ballot. And in that kind of situation, you will then need to quickly withdraw your application from that school and to apply in another school, which might be your second choice or third choice. So these are scenarios that will happen during the primary one registration period. So we always encourage parents not to just bank in on one school, but to always have a few schools on your list that you can prioritize. And during that period, you need to monitor very closely the daily figure of registration. And if need to, you might even want to call the school to find out the status of the registration so that you are able to evaluate your chances of getting into that school. All right. So we just want to say that for today's presentation, we are also going to be highlighting some changes that was announced. Actually, it was announced twice last year. In March, there was already announcement that there will be some adjustment to the P1 registration system. And I think during August or September, there was an official announcement from MOE with regard to the actual changes that are going to be put in place. So we will be explaining those changes today and the impact on the number of places that we are able to allocate for each phase for our school per se. For those of us who want to read in more details the respective changes to the primary one registration, you can go into the link that is shown on this slide here in MOE website. So this is the latest from MOE, and it outlines the changes that was announced last year. So you will get all the information there as well. All right, so for those of us who might be new to primary one registration, you probably have heard that it's a very complicated process with different phases. So you might be wondering what phase are you qualifying for your child. So we'll explain a little bit more details in the next 1 or 2 slides. So for primary one registration, the earlier phases, phase 1 and phase 2, are meant for Singapore citizens and permanent residents only. If you are international students, you will only qualify for phase 3. Okay, and usually by phase 3, there will be a lot of school places, particularly the popular ones, whereby they were already been filled with the Singapore citizens and permanent residents. So for the international students, your school choice actually will be decided by MOE. So you will need to look into MOE website on the process that you will go through, because you will need to pre-register yourself with MOE with regards to your interests in the P1 registration. And at the end of phase 1 and phase 2, MOE would then be looking into the pool of international students that are registered with them, and they will decide on the posting of these students into schools that are still left with vacancies at that stage. So for phase 1, we always take in the children whose siblings are currently studying in the primary school. So it will be existing children's younger brothers or sisters that we'll be taking in. Okay, so that will be for phase 1. And generally at this stage, no school will ballot at phase 1. Okay, so there's always enough places after that such that we are, number 1, we are able to take in all the siblings, and number 2, after taking all the siblings, we will still have places left for other residents living around the area. Okay, so at phase 1, we'll take in existing students' younger siblings. For phase 2A, which is new, so some of you might remember that it used to be phase 2A1 and 2A2. And the difference between 2A1 and 2A2 is that 2A1 give further priority to parents who are official alumni member of official registered alumni association that is associated with the school. Okay, so number 1, the alumni association must be officially registered, and that the parent must be an official member. So that was with 2A1, where they gave higher priority to those who are official members. But since last year, when they announced the changes that will be implemented this year, they have decided to merge. MOE has decided to merge these two phases, 2A1 and 2A2, into one single phase called 2A. So meaning from this year onwards, there's no longer distinction between parents who are official member of the Alumni Association, or if you are just ex-student but not a member of the Alumni Association, you'll be considered equal. So that's the one change in the phase 2A. So other than parents or siblings who is former student of the school, so this former siblings will be in relation to phase 1. So in phase 1, we take in siblings of existing students. So meaning the older siblings must still be studying in our school. Then the younger siblings will be qualified for phase 1. But if this older siblings has already graduated and is now in a secondary school, then the younger siblings would qualify not in phase 1, but in phase 2A. Okay. So phase 2A, we take in students whose parents was a former student or an older siblings who was a former student of the school. Okay, so it includes those who joined the Alumni Association and also those who did not join. We also take in children whose parents are members of the school advisory or management committee. But this number will be quite small because generally the school advisory or the school management committee will be quite small. So we don't expect a lot of children that will be qualifying under this category. We also take in children whose parents are staff members of our school. So that would also make it more convenient for our staff members in terms of their work arrangement and family arrangement in terms of sending their children to school. So if they can just send their own children to the same school that they are working in, it will provide more convenience for them. There is also this category whereby the MOE kindergarten that are operating within the primary school would also qualify for the children studying in that MOE kindergarten would also qualify registration into that same school under phase 2A. For Admiralty Primary School, because we do not have an MOE kindergarten, so we will not have students under this category. Okay, but for other schools that you might be interested in, if you might want to check whether they have an MOE kindergarten operating within their premise, because if so, then students from that MOE kindergarten would qualify for phase 2A. So meaning that they will have a higher priority than all other students around the neighborhood. Okay, so that'll be for phase 2A. For phase 2B, generally we refer phase 2B phase as a phase whereby parents who do volunteer work. So this is one category that a lot of parents have heard about, that if you want to get yourself into a higher priority, you can volunteer in that school as a parent volunteer. So phase 2B is the phase whereby we will take in children whose parents have worked as a parent volunteer for the school and have satisfied certain criteria, which we will go into that later on. It also includes children whose parents are members who are endorsed by the church or the clan who are connected with the primary school. So Admiralty Primary School is a government school, so we do not have any parents under this subcategory. But for this subcategory, we'll be referring to mission schools. It will be also applied to schools that are, say, under Singapore Hokkien Hui Kwan. Okay, so these schools would have parents who, if they are members endorsed by the Associated Church or with Hui Kwan, then they will qualify under phase 2B. And again, the churches and also the clans are also free to set additional criteria. So it's not just that you are a member and then you can go in without any additional condition. Usually they will have other additional condition associated with it before you will qualify for phase 2B. Other than this, for parents who are active volunteers in the RCs, you will also qualify under this category phase 2B. So if you are endorsed as an active community leader, which include RC, active RC members, you will also qualify for phase 2B with the necessary recommendation letter from the organization. So phase 2C is the phase next that will be for any children who have no connection whatsoever with the primary school. Okay, so as long as you are Singapore citizens or Singapore PR, you will qualify for phase 2C. Okay, so that will be the different phases. So phase 2C, after phase 2C, there will usually be a phase 2C supplementary, because as we have said, there will be balloting. Okay, we will explain the balloting process in a little bit later. So you will know that if the number of applications exceeds the number of places that are allocated to any of this phase, then there will be a balloting situation. Okay, and if there's a balloting situation, then you can be either successful or not successful in the balloting. Okay, so for those that are in any of the phases, if you are balloted and you are not successful, then you automatically would have to consider whether you are able to apply for the next phase. So for those that have no connections with the school, you will the first category that you will qualify will be for phase 2C. And because some of you will be choosing a school that could be quite popular and that there's a chance that you might get balloted out, so that's when the phase 2C supplementary will come in. So you actually have a second choice. Okay, so you can take some risk at phase 2C, okay, assuming that you don't have any other connections that qualify you for the earlier phases. You are given a second choice under phase 2C supplementary. So if your balloting is not successful in phase 2C, you will drop into 2C supplementary, during which you will look out for schools that still have places remaining after phase 2C. So for the very popular school, by phase 2C, they would have gotten all their places filled. So for the phase 2C supplementary, it will be for those schools that will still have places left after phase 2C. So meaning that most probably these schools did not get into a balloting situation under phase 2C. So if your balloting in phase 2C is not successful, then at phase 2C supplementary, your choices will be limited to those schools that still have places left. As I've said, after that, that's it. So if you, at phase 2C, you are still taking risks, because at phase 2C, some school will still get into balloting situation. Okay, because they might not get their places totally filled up in phase 2C, but they might be left with 1 or 2 places. So if at phase 2C supplementary, the number of parents registered there is more than the 1 or 2 places left, they will get themselves into a balloting situation. So again, if that were to be the case, and if you take risk again in phase 2C supplementary and you do not get in, then you will also drop into phase 3 together with the rest of the international students. All right. So that will be the phases. And okay. So we just want to explain a little bit more about the allocation of places. So as I've said, the number of places that a school can take in each year is decided by MOE. And MOE will decide on that figure based on the number of babies that are born, under the national statistics are due for registration into primary 1. So they will look at the neighborhood to see how many students are due to enter primary 1 next year. Then they would decide on the number of places to be opened up by each of the schools. So far, this number usually will not fluctuate by a lot from year to year. So far for the last few years, it has maintained for our school, maintained at 210. The number might change, but we hope that it will not change. So that is the number that we are using to do our estimation at this stage. Number of places to be taken up in primary one, as I said, we will take in all the siblings, and so far 85 is the rough gauge of the number of siblings that we likely to have. Right now, at this point in time, we still do not have the exact figures in terms of the number of siblings who are interested to register in our school yet, but we are estimating about 85. So once 85 places are being taken up, we are left with 125 places left. So under the phase one, under the P1 registration system, once we take in all the phase one students, the next thing that we are supposed to do as a school is that we are supposed to allocate 20 places for phase 2B and 40 places at phase 2C. Before we do anything else, we must first of all allocate 20 to phase 2B and 40 to phase 2C. So guarantee for all schools that you would have at least 20 places in 2B and guaranteed at least 40 places at phase 2C. Okay, then after that, we will move into phase 2A. Okay, so in this case here, you will see our figure here. After phase 1, we have 125 places. Allocate 20 to phase 2B, we are left with 105. And then after allocating 40, we are left with 65. Okay, so with this 65 places, we next move into phase 2A. Okay, which is taking in students whose parents was ex-students or their older siblings were ex-students from the school generally. Okay, and for our school, we are estimating probably for this year, we might have about 29. So with this 29, so these are just rough figure, they are estimation only. These 29 places taken up out of the 65 that is left over, we are now left with 36 places. So with this 36 places, we will then divide it again between phase 2B and phase 2C. And the way we divide out the places is that it will be 2 parts to 2C and 1 part to 2B kind of ratio. So meaning whatever that's left behind after phase 2A, we'll actually divide it by 3, and then 2 parts of that will go into phase 2C and 1 part will go to phase 2B. So if you look at the numbers that are highlighted in bold and blue, you'll see that the readjusted places allocation that is announced last year is that phase 2C will get double the places allocation than phase 2B. So you see that at the first instance where we set the number of compulsory places, it is 40 at phase 2C and 20 at phase 2B. Again, leftover places after phase 2A, we would again divide it in that same ratio. So likelihood for our school this year, we are projecting to have about 32 places available for phase 2B and 64 places for phase 2C. Okay, so that's the rough estimate in terms of the available places for our school at this stage. All right, so this table shows how we estimated the numbers that we are using for my calculation above. So you'll see that for phase 1, over the past 3 years, the number was 83, 88, and 83. So that's why for this year, my estimation, I took an average and it's 85. For phase 2A, we see that over the last 3 years, it has been on an increasing trend, 22, 24, 27. So this year, I'm projecting 29. Now, this trend in phase 2A is also associated with the age of a school. So for a school like Admiralty Primary School, whereby we are celebrating our 25th anniversary, so if you count, our school has been around for 25 years. If you count our first few batches, they are actually reaching the age of graduating from their studies, having jobs, and probably got married and then have children, and that their children will now be reaching an age whereby they will be considering registering them in a primary school. And for these parents, if they are still living around this neighborhood, there's a chance that they might want to send their children back to their alma mater. And so for many schools that are of this similar number of years in operation, we will start to see a rising trend in phase 2A. So that's the kind of trend that we are expecting, and that's why we estimated that for this year, the phase 2A, we might get 29. Again, this is just an estimation. It might go higher, it might go lower. Okay, and that's how we worked out that after this, at the end, we are left with 32 for phase 2B and 64 for phase 2C. Now, in my other presentation, I have presented similar figures. The actual figure itself might actually not exactly the same as here, but you will see the trend there. So anyway, these are all projections and estimations, and they are by no means the actual exact figures that we should be expecting in the P1 registration, because it all depends on the actual number for phase 1 and phase 2A. All right. So as we have said, right now for our school, we would not expect balloting at phase 1. We would not expect balloting at phase 2A at this stage, because I cannot imagine the number in phase 2A to suddenly balloon to be over 100. So likelihood is that for phase 1, phase 2A, we will not have a balloting situation, and that that 2B and 2C, because the number is fixed by the computation process. Okay, so there is a chance that we will be balloting for phase 2B and phase 2C. So when we get into a balloting situation, that is when the number of students registered for that phase exceed the number of places available. Once we hit that mark, we get into a balloting situation for that phase. When balloting happens, then the students will be divided into 3 groups. Okay, so those who live within 1 kilometer of the school, 1 group. Those who are allocated between 1 and 2, another group. Those who are outside 2 kilometers will be the 3rd group. And then we will look at which will be the group that will get ballot. Okay, so first thing first is, if we have leftover places, we will look at all children living within 1 kilometer. Okay, if the number is smaller than the number of places, then we will take in all the students who live within 1 kilometer first, and then move on to the next category. Once the number in that category exceed the number of places left, we will get into a balloting situation for that group. So meaning in this case, just now I said that, okay, we might be able to take in all students within 1 kilometer, and then we move on to the next part, which is between 1 and 2. So if the number of students registered between 1 and 2 is more than the number of places left, then the balloting will happen in this group within 1 and 2 kilometer. And what it means is that for students who are within 1 kilometer, they would already be in. So students who live within 1 kilometer, they need not be balloted. They need not go through the balloting. Only the students between 1 and 2K will go for balloting. Those who live outside 2K, you don't even get a chance to ballot. So that's what the balloting means, and the 3 categories of balloting. All right. Now for our school, okay, we are expecting that last year, our balloting for phase 2B was within 1 to 2 kilometers. Okay, but this year, because of the shrinking of the number of phase 2B, because more places are being allocated to phase 2C, we are expecting that the balloting for phase 2B will happen for 1 kilometer, or within 1 kilometer. For phase 2C, our balloting has been within 1 kilometer for the last few years, and the number of students registering for phase 2C has always been very large. So even with the increased number now allocated for phase 2C, we are still expecting the competition to be keen, and that the balloting is likely to remain within 1 kilometer. Again, these are just our anticipation based on the numbers that we have right now and the trend that we are seeing from the past few years, the actual situation would only become clear when we move into the actual registration process. So these are just expectations, but we are sharing with you what is our projection and our estimation. Okay, so when the balloting is happening for Singapore citizens, okay, many of us know that the P1 registration system gives absolute priority to Singapore citizens. So Singapore citizens will have absolute priority. And therefore, in this case here, when there's a balloting, we will consider Singapore citizen first. And once there's a balloting for Singapore citizens, the PR do not stand a chance at all. And the Singapore citizen would have absolute priority, meaning that the Singapore citizen, no matter how far away from the school you are, you will be considered first before any permanent residents. So meaning the permanent residents can be just living next door from the school, but they will still be considered at a lower priority from, as compared to a Singapore citizen who is living very, very far away. Okay, so that's the meaning of absolute priority. So for our school, the balloting is expected for Singapore citizens only. So for Singapore PR, really the chances of entering our school through this process of phase 2B and phase 2C is not high. Okay. All right. Next, we want to explain a little bit more about our phase 2B parent volunteer system. So as I've said, the phase 2B consists of other categories of parents as well, church and clan related ones, active community leader as well. But here for parent volunteer, we just want to highlight that for this year's phase 2B registration, the parent volunteer should have already started volunteering last year, 2021. So if you have not volunteered as a parent volunteer at this stage, then there won't be any chance for you to qualify under phase 2B. Okay. But for those of us parents who are now maybe looking ahead and your child actually is registering for next year, then this is your chance, in terms of sourcing of schools, and then for schools that you want to get yourself into a higher priority into phase 2B, then you will want to join the school as a parent volunteer no later than 1st of July. And in fact, for popular schools, their cutoff for their parent volunteer registration might even happen before 1st of July, because if the response has been very great and that they already have more parent volunteer than they feel they are able to allocate places to, then they will actually cut the registration deadline earlier than 1st of July. Okay, and generally, you will need to do 40 hours. So for our school, Admiralty Primary School, our parent volunteer would have to do a minimum of 40 hours of volunteer service. And usually for all schools in Singapore, the volunteer service actually stretches over a period of 1 year. So you need to volunteer before July the year before, and then you have until June the year that your child is due to register for P1 registration on 30th of June. Okay. We also want to highlight that the completion of 40 hours of volunteer service does not guarantee a place, because again, if the number of parent volunteers who completed their 40 hours exceed the number of places available, then again, there will be a balloting situation, and that not all parent volunteers will be successful. So this is a reality of the parent volunteer scheme. Okay. All right, so on top, we highlight again about the completion of 40 hours of volunteer service does not guarantee a place in the school for the child, and that we are, for Admiralty Primary School, we are going to be holding an engagement session to explain more about our parent volunteer scheme, and the date of that engagement session is slated on 22nd of March, which I think is 2 weeks later, and it will be on 11 to 12:30. Okay, so it will be in the morning to midday kind of period. For those parents who are interested, we would like to invite you to go to the form to sign up for the session, so that we can correspond with you a bit more with regards to sharing with you the details of the Zoom session. Okay, this slide shows the dates of the Primary 1 registration, which is also available in MOE's website. So if you go to MOE's website, you will be able to see all the dates for the P1 registration of the different phases for this year. Okay. So that's the explanation for the P1 registration. So next, I'm going to move on to talk about our education philosophy of Admiralty Primary School and our school program for you to consider. So you would have seen a lot of big education shifts that has been happening over the years. And some of these articles and trends I just want to highlight and to mention how these trends are also influencing the way our programs and our emphasis is being structured. So an articles that I always like to refer to, even though it is already a few years old, it is this, whereby for those of us, I think we in Singapore, we have been trying to sing a different tune for many parents, whereby they are very fixated in terms of wanting their children to go to a brand name school, in the belief that the brand name school is the kind of school that they should be going after, or they should be trying their best to send their children to. We just want to highlight, now this article might be talking about an adult whose name of the college is something that nobody will ask. Nobody will ask. So similarly, all the more for primary schools. In fact, for those of us as adults, if you ask around, do people really know which primary school we have been to? The answer is not really. And did anybody really ask? The answer is also no. So really, especially when it comes to the stage of primary school, where you go for your primary school education is actually not important. It's actually not important. And of course, our previous minister, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, one of his very famous quotes was, "Every school a good school." And of course, that quote, there are people who embrace it, but there are also people who are critical about that statement and say that how can you, minister, say this, and they will bring up a lot of examples as to why the schools are not equal and they are not equally good. Okay, but for us, I think in education, we embrace that. We have different factors. Now, of course, if you say whether every school is the same school, the answer is no. But in terms of many factors, in terms of allocation of staff, allocation of students, allocations of money and resources, they are actually all equal, or access to national curriculum. Actually, when it comes to the allocation of money to all schools, okay, particularly government school, is actually the same throughout. Whether you're a popular school or you are not so popular school, the allocation of funds is the same. The allocation of teachers, for those of us who might know, the allocation of teachers to the schools are actually based on distance. So a lot of teachers actually choose to go to a school, to teach in the school that is near to their places of residence. So, and of course, we do not expect that teachers from a particular area of Singapore are better teachers than other areas. I don't think there is such a notion. I mean, I don't think so. Yeah. So therefore, the teachers, the quality of teachers in all the schools are actually the same. Okay. If you want to say that there are good teachers, there are better teachers, and there are the not so good teachers, I would say this: all schools have them. All schools have all of them. So from that angle, in terms of the qualities of the teachers, it's again the same. Allocation of money, allocation of resources, the building specifications is all the same, even up to the floor area of each primary school actually is standardized for all the schools. So really, from all these resource provision, and these are the major ones, there is actually no discrimination across all the schools. So really, we mean it, and Minister meant it. Minister Heng meant it when he says every school a good school. Okay, it's because of that. So that's something that we want to share with the parents. And really, there are many, many examples about children coming from all different kinds of schools. If you ask RI, RGS, the two of the most popular secondary school, if you ask them where their students come from, they will not say that they only come from the popular primary school. Students who enter these popular secondary school actually come from all over Singapore, and particularly the locality nearer to these schools. Okay, but in particular, they take in a wide variety of students from many different schools, whether they are popular or not so popular. Okay, so that's a reality. Of course, on 11th Feb, and also I think recently during the Committee of Supply debates in Parliament, our Minister Chan also have mentioned quite a bit about the kind of changes that are happening in the education landscape. But one of his speech on 11th of Feb mentioned about this, about the definition of success in education is changing. And I think recently he also made these statements about how going forward, the way we are assessing our children in our assessments would also be changing. That rote learning will be de-emphasized, and that we require our students to be more thinking, to be more about problem solving, to be more not just about memorization of knowledge, but about how you use these knowledge to solve authentic problems. So that's the way education is going to shift. And this is just one example of the articles that shows the kind of shifts that are even happening right now under Minister Chan. Of course, with the pandemic, there is also a lot of changes in the way we work. So definitely the way we are learning has a huge impact because of the pandemic as well. The use of ICT, I think overnight, from before, whereby I think in education or even outside, okay, we know that certain ICT related kind of working arrangement before COVID-19, it was deemed as impossible. But straight away overnight, because of the restriction of pandemic, everything became possible. The same happened for education as well. And because of that, there are implications. And with this COVID-19, not just our work has changed or our education has changed, but the whole world has changed as well. The kind of opportunities, the kind of expectation, the kind of competitions that is going to be out there in the world for us and for our children has already changed, and it will change even further. So future of education, really in summary, going forward, you will be less of examination. So recently we just, Minister just announced the removal of mid-year examination. Okay, so all these examinations will be removed. Number one is to reduce stress, but number two is again about how the examination and when teaching and learning is not for the sake of learning, but for the sake of examination. There is a kind of mismatch in terms of the objective of education. So this trend about removing more and more examinations will be the trend that will happen. And in place of that, okay, it will be other kind of assessments. Okay, removal of examination does not mean removal of assessment, but that the mode of assessment will be a different one. Okay, so going back, there'll be less of examination, there'll be less of just pure knowledge delivery, there'll be less of rote learning, and students just passively sitting there absorbing teachers' teaching. Okay, we have mentioned that many years, but really the shift is going to happen moving forward. And in place of these older methods and older framing of education will be multimodal assessment. There's no pen and paper test or big mid-year examination and maybe even end-of-year examination, but that in replacement, there will be more alternative kind of assessment. There might be smaller chunks of assessments and also in alternative mode. Some of the things that we have been doing in our school will include students doing audio recording of their reading of passages, videotaping of themselves doing certain performance tasks. And these will be submitted for grading. So when it comes to the style of assessment, things are changing as well. Learning should become more individualized, and learning, instead of just sitting there passively, would also involve more interactivity between the students and the knowledge that they are trying to learn. So these are the big pieces, and with this, it also frames the kind of program that we are offering in Admiralty Primary School. So what can we offer? Now, of course, these are some of our establishments and our achievements so far. We believe that we do have a strong reputation in the Woodlands community. Again, we are thankful for parents who are out there who have been spreading good messages about our schools. And we are glad that particularly for those parents whose children have studied in our school, we are grateful, and we are happy that they are happy with how their children have turned out after studying in our school. So we know that with our 25 years operating in Woodlands community, we also have accumulated a lot of goodwill and strong reputation within this community. Our performance at the national exam has always been good. So these are something that we do not release into the public because it's part of MOE's policy to reduce that kind of over competition between the different primary schools, and also the parents from labeling and naming, you know, the school by the examination results. So that's why we do not release these data in terms of the actual scores, but we are performing well. If you ask around, parents are generally happy with their children's performance at the national examination. Something that we are also well known for is that we do have a broad definition of success beyond just academics. Okay, that other than academics, which we are very strong in, okay, based on our education, our national examination result, and also in terms of the program. Some of you might have access to our worksheets. You might have heard from children who have studied in our school talking about the kind of assessment or the kind of program that we offer for them. So you will know that we are also well known in terms of focusing on that deep learning, and that our curriculum is rigorous. We do challenge and we do stretch our students to maximize their development. So definitely coming into our schools here, we are not getting our children to just cruise through, okay, with minimum challenges. We do try our best to challenge them. We do try our best to stretch them. Okay, we encourage them in terms of their participation in CCAs. So unlike some other schools whereby the CCAs might be more of a voluntary or optional kind of basis, in our schools, it is I can almost say that it is compulsory, because the way we structure our CCA is that it is quite unusual, or maybe even not very possible for a child not to be participating in a CCA. Okay, of course, primary 1 and primary 2, based on MOE's policies, we do not get them to participate in the official CCAs, but they have other programs in their primary 1 and primary 2 that are preparing them for the CCAs that they will join in primary 3 to primary 6. We are very strong in our ICT enabled lessons. Since 2013, we run this program whereby students are required to bring iPad to school in primary 3 and primary 4, and we are extending it to other levels as well. We advocate discipline with dignity. We do cane the students, but again, these are for very, very serious cases, and that the kind of, so we do discipline, we do cane, but we do want to ensure that these are, we are very careful in terms of how we discipline, and that the dignity of the students are very important to us. Okay, so we do not hesitate to discipline, but we also want to make sure that the children understand why they are facing certain disciplinary consequences. Okay, our learning, we do emphasize on multiple perspectives, particularly in their character and citizenship education, whereby we always get them to consider and seeing things from others' perspectives. so that they are not too self-centered and they don't just see the world through their own lenses, but they also understand how different people see the world differently, and therefore their own views are not the only views that are the valid ones. There are also other perspectives towards the same thing. We are also, over the last 1 year and this year, we are continuing that process, whereby we are having a more structured program to guide our children in terms of their considerations and choice of their secondary schools, particularly in terms of possibilities of entering to these schools through the direct school admission process. So leveraging on technology, we just want to highlight a little bit more about the use of technology in our school. So with the COVID-19, really technology-infused teaching and learning is become the new normal. And for our school, moving forward, even as we are slowly easing ourselves into this stage of living with COVID, we want to say that the kind of technology infusion in our teaching and learning will not go away. Okay, it will stay and it will go even further. Okay, so the use of technology is being used to augment the class teaching. So when we talk about technology infusion in teaching and learning, it's not just about the use of technology within class teaching, okay, but it is about technology used outside of teaching. So even in primary school, for those children who are studying in our school, the parents realize that quite a lot of the tasks that we allocate to our children actually require them to assess and finish their assignments through the use of computers, even outside of the school. So that's the kind of expectation and the kind of learning activities that the children will be engaged in Admiralty Primary School. So home access to technology and network is very important. And that at primary 3 and primary 4, we are moving towards the 100% adoption of bring your own device. Okay, the technology adoption at primary 3 and primary 4 is everyone is expected to bring a device to school. Okay, at this point in time, the most popular or the default device is actually an iPad. But for those families who decided that they might not want to purchase iPad and they want to purchase Android tablet, it is also okay. It is also okay. There will be certain inconvenience and maybe incompatibility because the teachers are probably more used to the iPad, and that for children who are not using iPad, they might find that some of the instructions that the teachers are giving doesn't quite apply to them completely, that they have to say, oh, in Android, how does Android do the same thing as compared to some processes that are being done in the iPad using a separate set of processes and steps. So, but we have children who are bringing Android tablets to schools, and with certain kind of adjustment and expectation, they are able to still learn properly with the use of a non-iPad devices. But the iPad is our default choices, and that we are pushing for 100% adoption. Right now, we are at 75% at primary 3 and primary 4, and that the students without the iPad are being mixed with the children who are with devices. And so the instructions, because a larger majorities are with devices, so those who are without devices are actually in a smaller proportions. And we do see some of the inconveniences that the children are facing without their own devices. So really, we are also sending out this message to all the parents that if you want to choose Admiralty Primary School, we hope that you are going to be also embracing our device program, particularly at P3 and P4, when the children will be expected to bring their own devices to school. Okay, so on top of that, so the primary 3 and primary 4 technology assisted learning through iPad or Android tablet is our flagship program. At the same time, while we say, okay, 100% of our students, we expect them to bring technology to class, we don't just jumpstart that at primary 3, just cold and overnight like that. At primary 1 and primary 2, we are usually also already exposing them to the use of technology in learning. Of course, over the last 2 years, the home-based learnings, because of the circuit breaker, were actually like, P1 and P2 are forced to use technology at home already. But even without that kind of push, because of the COVID-19 situation, the teachers actually also do certain assignments that will require the children to assess the learning or the learning materials through the use of technology at home. So, and also in certain times in the school, the teachers would also arrange for the devices to be pushed into the classroom for those lessons, and that the children will get to use the tablets in some of their learning activities. So at P1 and P2, they are already getting some early exposures to technologies. And then P3 and P4 is the main technology program. Now, when we move to P5 and P6, again, we are expecting them to be more mature. And while the technology use, because at 5 and 6, they are also gearing towards national examinations. So some of the use of technology actually might take a slightly secondary kind of position. But we are also, with more and more children who are apt in the use of technology because of our larger proportion of students who are already bringing devices to school at primary 3 and primary 4, we are expecting the use of technology at primary 5 and primary 6 to go even higher than the current stage. So this is something that is happening right now at primary 5 and primary 6. So you see that how from primary 1 to primary 6, the use of technology is actually very active in our school. In the COVID-19, during the COVID-19, we just want to say this because some of you might have other children or heard of friends' children who are in school. In Admiralty Primary, the way we do our teaching and learning is that we customize the learning material for each class. And these are managed by the form teachers and subject teachers. So unlike some other schools whereby the teachers are not so used to preparing their materials, they actually depend on a central team of teachers to come up with a standardized program, and all teachers will just take the program and run it in their classes. But in our school, many of our teachers are very ICT savvy. So we are able to achieve this state whereby all the learning materials are actually customized by the individual teachers. And that for each form class, the form teachers will be the one to coordinate the use of different materials that are being dished out to our children during the home-based learning period. Okay, so on top of that, during the home-based learning period, we have also started the infusion of technology into other learning processes like CCAs, like conversational mother tongue, or even e-learning journeys that the students are having in terms of our interactions with students overseas. These are all done through the e-form, and is something that we are very active in pursuing these different kind of learning arrangement in our school. So other than that, we want to go on to our program. Again, we go back to this whole notion about education being shifting away from rote learning, and that it is about interactivity, it is about individualized, it's about deeper use of knowledge rather than just taking in the knowledge. So we have literature programs. So you know that in primary school, English literature is not a compulsory, it's not a subject that is tested at the national level. But we are introducing literature in the primary school so that our children are introduced to schools, to the skills and analysis that are very apt in terms of the analysis of characters, analysis of storylines, analysis of writers' styles or the writer's language, and to infer the kind of meaning or even things or even implications that are not explicitly stated. So these, what you are seeing on this slide here are actually some of the things that we capture from our teachers program, and this one here is particularly from a book called The Day the Crayon Quits. Inside each crayon of different colors, they all have their letters written to the owner, who's a little boy called Duncan, to express their unhappiness about how Duncan has been using them. So each of these different colors have their own different grievances, and from their writing, the students are actually able to infer the kind of characteristic of these different crayons. Okay, some are very self-centered, some have a sense of self-pity, some are very confident, but some might feel that they are actually not the favorite, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that the children are being exposed to, and this is actually a primary 1 book. So that's the literature program in our English literature, and we do have books that the students will read from primary 1 all the way to primary 6. For our mother tongue program, we also want to share that higher mother tongues includes higher Chinese, higher Malay, higher Tamil. We strongly encourage them, our students, to take up these higher mother tongue languages. And right at primary 3 and primary 4, many of our children are already exposed to higher mother tongue, and it's something that we do want to strongly encourage parents to allow and to encourage your children to subscribe to these programs and to build up a much stronger base for their mother tongue languages, because these mother tongue languages are going to be additional advantage that they will have in terms of their competitiveness when they grow up. Because the future, we are seeing definitely the rise of China. We are seeing that India is not going to be far behind. We are also saying that our ASEAN region, where the use of Malay language is definitely very strong in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Indonesia is one of the biggest country in the whole of Southeast Asia. And therefore, in terms of the kind of additional advantage and opportunities that our children are going to have if they are able to have a strong grasp in terms of their mother tongue languages. So higher mother tongue is strongly encouraged in our school as well. And in our mother tongue languages, other than the higher mother tongue programs that we strongly encourage our children to subscribe to, in our teaching and learning, we are also introducing additional texts. They are at this stage not in terms of the book size that the English language is pushing, but we do introduce good stories, good short stories to our students, and we also go through the same kind of analysis that we go through in our, as in our English literature program as well. We do have speech and drama that will strengthen their oral competencies, and we have culture and festivals because mother tongue languages is associated with our individual cultures. So the celebration of culture and festival is also very much emphasized in our school. And of course, we want to strongly encourage that families do provide that kind of emphasis and that kind of materials, making sure that prints are available, not just in English language, but also in mother tongue languages, bringing your children to the library, not just to borrow English books, but to also borrow books in mother tongues so that they will have a good foundation in their mother tongue as well. For Chinese language, we do have guided reading programs whereby the teachers would also introduce additional books that they will read together with the children, and they will do some analysis of the books. Okay, learning at home, festival fun, parent-child bonding activities. So these are some of the highlights of the kind of activities that we engage our children in. In terms of Tamil language, some of the highlights include the speech and drama program, includes the mother tongue fortnights, show and tell, and cultural exposure. For our Malay language, okay, we also have emphasis in terms of the playing of traditional games, which is part of the culture. Okay, interviewing of new friends, getting them to practice using the language, doing card and poster making, sandwich making, spelling bee, and also mother tongue language fortnight. So these are some of the different programs that we use to strengthen our children in terms of their attainment of competencies in the mother tongue languages. For the other mainstream subjects, we also have other activities that we like to encourage parents at home to be doing together with our children. So we have family science in some of these activities, going to the zoo, doing some household experiments using materials that you can find in your homes. We have family mathematics, and we have children to engage themselves in terms of authentic use of these subjects and concepts in their everyday lives. Okay, so this is some of the worksheets that your children will be given. And then the learning with technology is another one that we have just started since last year. And this is, again, one of those other things whereby we want to encourage stronger infusion of the use of technology in the whole process of teaching and learning, not just in terms of use in the classroom, but also use outside of the classroom. For those of us with children in the secondary school, this might not be new to you, because since not this year, but last year in 2021, already with the provision of the individual devices to the secondary school children, they are already having their blended learning days, whereby days they need not go to school, and then they have all these learning assignments that they need to organize their own time and to finish in their own time. So we are also starting some of these processes at the primary school stage, so that our children are also learning the skill sets necessary for them when they move on to secondary school. All right, so next, our CCA program, we just want to talk about the linkage. So as I've said, children will join into the CCA program only in primary 3, and then they will be in a CCA for primary 3 to primary 6. In their primary 1 and primary 2, they will actually go through the program called Program for Active Learning, whereby they will be exposed to different elements that actually approximate the kind of CCA that they will encounter in primary 3 onwards. And the objective is really to get the primary 1 and primary 2 children have a first taste on the different kind of CCA elements that is available. So the whole objective is we don't want our children to zoom into the CCA too quickly at primary 1 and primary 2. We want them to have a more broad-based exposure to the different kind of CCA that are possible. And we do that through a modular form. So we have the outdoor education element, we have the performing arts elements, we have the game and sports element, and we have the visual arts elements. And these are spread across the academic year for them to experience. And at the end of primary 2, they will then evaluate their experience. And based on the teacher's feedback, that will help them to say what is the area that they are most interested in. And therefore, to subscribe or to choose the CCAs that actually are linked with these broader areas that they have experienced in primary 1 and primary 2. So that's the purpose of the PAL program, in terms of helping them to make choices, find out about their interests and strengths, and then to make choices for the CCA from primary 3 onwards. And in primary 3 onwards, it will be about their learning in the CCA program. And again, the longer term view in primary 3 to primary 6 as they are participating in CCA is to build their competency in these specialized activities, to either build up the skill sets in these CCA, so like the technique of kicking football, being a very good footballer, being a very good member of choir, having that kind of technical knowledge about how choir functions, how to sing, musical instruments that they learn. So these are all the technical abilities that they are expected to acquire from primary 3 to primary 6. And on top of that, we also ask students to think about their leadership development within the CCA itself. And with all these different skill sets that they are picking up through their CCA experience, we then ask them to say, okay, so with these skill sets that you have, now look at the different secondary schools out there within the Woodlands community and even outside of Woodlands community, for those of us who are eyeing on certain schools. Look at what are the kind of specialization the different secondary schools have. Look at the kind of programs that they are taking in children for direct school admission, and ask yourselves whether you have the right set of skills that are matching to the kind of talents that the secondary schools are looking out for, and from which you will then be able to try to apply to these schools through the direct school admission. And direct school admission is open for all secondary schools. So whether you are a top branded schools that are taking in children with very competitive cutoff scores, or you are belonging to the midstream, or even what we say the tail end of the spectrum, whereby you are taking in students whose AL score might be around 18 to 20, all schools are actually looking out for students through direct school admission. And therefore, this direct school admission is actually open to all students, not just to elite students who are maybe elite player in the sports, but every child actually do have a chance. It depends on where are your competitions. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we are bringing our children through to the 6 years process, and to groom them towards building up their competencies, and then making that kind of decision and evaluation about how their skills is moving them towards their career choice or even their secondary school choice. So that's the kind of thing that we are bringing our children through. So that promoting of holistic education, our school, in terms of CCA, we do have 19 CCA. Some of you might feel that you are not seeing the kind of CCA that you want your children are in. We get questions whereby, why is the school not having a badminton team? So because you see that badminton is missing here, and badminton is probably one of the popular sports that many families might be playing. But we do want to say that these CCAs are being chosen, and they are already a very stretched set. So for the number of students that we have in our school, to be able to sustain, to be able to have enough students to staff these CCAs, so that we can come up with a big enough team to participate in the football competition, to participate in wushu competition, or even in terms of the dance competition. We need a sizable number of students. And with 19 CCAs, we are already very stretched. And we also ask that, it's not about the specific sports that matter, but it's also about the transferability of some of these skills in a particular sports to other sports. And it really requires the children to be able to see the more macro learning, that is not just about the sports, the narrow definition of that sports per se, but about transferable skills that they can then use to apply to other sports. For example, some students who are in wushu, they might be interested to apply to schools that are offering DSA in gymnastics. And they will try to use what they have learned in wushu, okay, to qualify themselves and to put a case forward to these secondary schools to say that I have the prerequisite background through my wushu experience to join your gymnastic team. And we do have schools that actually will take in our children, because it's not that the school, the secondary school cannot expect that all children would have gymnastic background, because gymnastic in particular is not something that is offered in many primary schools. So definitely, if they are looking out for students with gymnastic experience in primary school, then it will be very narrow, and they'll be missing out on a lot of talents. So they will want to take in children who are experienced in other areas as well, but they are relevant to gymnastics. So same thing for wushu going towards gymnastics. Same thing for football as well. We do have secondary schools that offer rugby. Again, rugby is not a sport that is very common in many primary schools, but they again are taking in rugby students whose experience in primary school is actually in other sports. So these are all possibilities, and therefore we want to open up that whole definition and considerations for our children and even for our parents. So these are some pictures that shows the kind of exposure and the kind of things that our students are doing in their various CCAs. So I'll go through this quite quickly. So these are for the performing arts, the guitar, the choir, the dancers, the uniform groups. We have the brownies. We also have scouts. In terms of other clubs and societies, we do have our innovation clubs and also our ICT clubs, our science, environmental clubs that are looking into environmental issues. So these are some of the clubs and societies that we have in our school. In terms of sports, some of our major ones will include football, include wushu, rope skipping, and also track and field. So on top of these programs, we also have our Learning for Life program, and the Learning for Life program in our school is in particular about building a performance mindset, building on the aspect of growth mindset, having a growth mindset, and how that growth mindset help to make our students in terms of a better performer. And the program that we have is actually a modification and extension from the traditional stories of the tortoise and the hare. And through the different kind of stories and variations that we have built, we teach our students about self-efficacy, about the danger of being complacent. We want to encourage them about their entrepreneurial dare, always staying relevant to the global trend, trade-off that is required in terms of making choices, and how they build up teamwork in terms of working with others. So these are some of the recurring themes that we will emphasize and teach our students through our programs each year. For our applied learning program, we are focusing on environmental project, but the main theme that we are working on is in terms of this concept of design thinking. So it's about not just about being green and so on, but about focusing on designing solutions to solve environmental issues and sustainability issues. So some of the ideas are there in terms of the process of design thinking, to empathize, to understand the problem, to define the scope of the problem that they want to work on, coming out with ideas, coming out with different ideas, building up, developing these ideas into prototype solutions that they are able to try out and test. So these are some of the process that the students will go through that whole design thinking process. Okay, so these are some of the pictures with regards to our students in their various stages in the whole design thinking process. Okay, applications to solve sustainability and environmental issues. Okay, and these are some of the prototypes that the students built to demonstrate their points and their ideas about how their solutions will look like. On top of these programs, we also have our cross-cultural program, and the aim is actually to help our children embrace diversity, to shape their multiple perspectives, and also having that opportunity, and particularly when, before COVID-19 and moving forward, once the whole global traveling scene is going to be revived after COVID-19, we actually encourage all our children at primary 5 to subscribe to one of the few learning journeys, overseas learning journeys that we have for our children. So you look at the bottom of the page, at primary 5, some of our overseas school partners will include schools in Beijing, school in Shanghai, schools in the neighboring region, Penang. We have some schools that are in partnership with us. Kota Kinabalu, Xi'an again is in China, and also Hong Kong. Indonesia, we also have some schools, and recently we have been having that learning and interactions with them that we have conducted with us. And in primary 2, primary 3, primary 4, we also have very, very thematic. All students will learn about Malay culture at primary 2. All students will learn about the Chinese culture in primary 3, and all students will learn about the Indian culture in primary 4, and the associated learning journeys as such. So we don't just want our children to understand their own root culture, but we also encourage them to understand more about the cultures, the dominant few cultures that are in existence in our Singapore society. Some of our student leaders are also involved in terms of their community programs, in terms of helping to give goodies, distribute goodies to families in our neighborhood. Our children involved in becoming buddy readers with the pre-primary students, in terms of sharing a pot with community, with our old folks in the Kampong Admiralty area. And also in terms of some of the environmental projects that the community is running, our students also actively participate in these programs. So other than these programs that we have, for parents who are interested in our school, we also want to share with you some of the unique features of our school program. And again, we ask you to see if these timing and other details actually match your family routines well enough. So our school generally starts at 7:30 in the morning and we end at 2:10. And so some of you might feel that 2:10 is a little bit late. That's because we do have a designated lunch time for our children. Okay, because we don't, there are many schools in Singapore that do not have a lunch time and they end their school at 1:30. Okay, but for our school, we believe that lunchtime is important for our children, and we want our children to have lunch at a particular time, which is near the midday. We actually feel that by the time it's 1 o'clock, it's a little bit late. And for those children who need to travel home, they might not be having their lunch until about 2 o'clock, which we feel for younger children is a little bit too late. So we feel that rather than trying to squeeze our program such that the children all can go home at 1:30, we much rather to be a bit more loose, not to be so, not to cram our program together, to allow that kind of space and flexibility. And at the same time, we put in a designated lunchtime and break time for them in the morning as well. So they have a healthy snack break, about 20 minutes, and then their lunch break will be for 40 minutes. That's for every day. Okay, so our school starts at 7:30 for most morning, and then we'll end at about 2:10. Now, the only exception is Monday. Our school runs CCA all together at the same time on Monday mornings. And that will be from 7:30 to 9:30. And then the students will take a break, and then the actual curriculum time will start at 10 o'clock each day. So for our younger children, primary 1 and primary 2, who do not need to participate in the CCA, on Mondays, P1 and P2 will report to school only at 10 a.m. So that do create a certain restriction on families, because you will need to have ways to look after your children before 10 o'clock. Okay, we do have some options for this group of parents who might need help in terms of their childcare arrangement on Monday morning before 10 o'clock. And we ask you to evaluate whether these choices are suitable for you. So we want to ask that for those who are considering taking school buses, do bear in mind that with this start time and end time, your children, especially if you are staying further away, your children might need to wake up very early so that they are being picked up by the school bus and then will reach the school on time. And that by the time your children reach home by the school bus, and then the school bus might run around the neighborhood and drop off other children before they reach your home. It could be quite late at about 3 o'clock or 3:30. So we ask you to consider these additional time that you might need depending on where you live. And on top of that, after the lessons, the official lessons end at 2:10. We do have other CCAs that might have additional sessions. We do have extra classes as well that will be running after the dismissal time at 2:10. So some of our students who might even have needs whereby, or even participation in CCA or even competitions that might require them to stay back after the official dismissals. So the hours in school can get quite long, okay? Especially when the children reach primary 3 and primary 6 to primary 6. So therefore, in terms of that school bus arrangement, you will need to consider quite carefully. And even if you need to, even if you are considering fetching children on your own, do bear in mind, number one, the traffic situation in the morning can be very crazy in the mornings when a lot of cars are coming into the school compound. So there might be jams in school as well, depending on the traffic condition outside. And also when it rains, definitely there will be a kind of situation that are happening in terms of our traffic arrangement as well. And even if you're thinking about picking up our children after school, again, with the variation and the timing, whether you are able to fit in this kind of timing for your children to fetch them and to the school and also out of school. So the CCA arrangement I've just mentioned already, and that we do have enrichment classes that are available, and there are childcare centers around our school compounds that do offer that care arrangement on Monday mornings. But a lot of time, these will be at an extra additional cost as compared to some other children who might be attending other schools. So these are, again, options and costs that you will need to be aware of if you are thinking about subscribing to these options. Other than our school, we have our own student care center within our school. But as for the same as many other schools, generally the number of places in the in-house student care centers are usually quite limited, and the priorities usually will be given to more needy families who are amongst our applicants. So for many other parents, your options is actually more towards the care centers that are situated around the school areas. All right. So these are some of the schools that are available, some of the student care centers that are available in our neighborhood that are also popular amongst our parents. So do call them up or check out on their websites to find out who they are. Okay, school bus arrangement, just be aware, this is a price range, I think from last year, and with the war situation right now and the rising transport costs, we are expecting the school bus prices to be a lot higher from this year onwards as well. And the kind of inconvenience that might be caused because of the differing dismissal time, depending on your children's participation in programs. So the school bus timing might not match very well as well. So these are some of the things that you need to be aware when you are considering our school or even any other schools that might be on the choice list. Okay, so subsidies, we do have financial assistance program just like any other schools, but there will also be the co-payment kind of portions that is expected. We have our technology program, which is something that we need you to consider. Now, of course, the price of these technologies have been dropping through the years. We are told that for iPad, not a very high-end one, but a workable high-end actually is within the price of $500. Okay, but still for those of us who have several children, if you want to have one device for each child, it can still come up to be a pretty big sum of investment that you need to have. So those are some of the considerations that you will need to bear in mind. We do consider our programs carefully. So because many of our programs will have school subsidies plus a chunk that needs to be co-paid by the parents. So we are also quite careful in terms of the selections for our programs. So these are in particular going to be open again once we go back to the normal school routines, whereby we will have programs like Swim Safer. We will have programs like maybe some learning journeys that we will require certain co-payment from the parents. Okay. Much of these payments will, of course, be deducted from the EduSave account that for each of the Singapore citizens that you are given such an account, and the money comes from the government, and we will deduct from these EduSave account as well. Okay, but once it comes to the bigger ticket items like the overseas learning journeys and the ICT devices, you will not be able to tap on these funds because the amount of fund will most likely not be sufficient for the overseas learning journey and the ICT devices. So you do have to consider your own cash top-ups when it comes to some of these bigger programs. So with that, that's all we have in terms of introducing our programs to you. So we hope that has been informational and helpful for you in terms of your understanding of Admiralty Primary School, and also in terms of helping you in your short listings of schools for your considerations. So now we'll move on to Q&A. Okay, right now, it seems that there is not many questions. So, okay, we can end the session. Okay. Yeah, so we probably give ourselves a little bit more, a few more minutes for parents who might still be keen on questions. But all in all, I think going back to my point just now about having a few short listing, I think Admiralty Primary School probably will be one of the earlier schools that are conducting our parent talk at this time of the year. And I think increasingly other schools will be having that. Some of you might have gotten knowledge of our session today from some other sources. Do have a short listing of schools that you might be interested in. Some of these schools that you might not have access in terms of that kind of information sharing as to when they are going to have a session like this to talk to the parents. You might want to regularly check their school websites because many of these sessions will be announced in their school website. So if you have no other avenues in terms of knowing when they are going to hold their sessions, of course, one of the ways is to call up their general office to ask them. But the other ways is also to check out their school websites. Maybe even to find out their previous year's sessions, when do they usually hold their sessions, if those informations are still available in their websites, and you can therefore try to watch out for those sessions for this year. Try to go for all these different sessions and collect all the information, as much information about these schools as possible, so that you are able to make a well-informed choice about which are the schools that you want to shortlist. The kind of program that they offer in the schools is something that you need to look out for. Increasingly, we are not, okay, of course, for us, we do highlight that our school program, our school students do perform well in their national examination, but that might not be something that is shared by other schools. And of course, for schools that share that particular piece of statement, exactly what do you mean by good performance? How is this good performance compared to other schools' good performance? Again, you will not have a very, very decisive gauge in terms of that kind of information. So how many PVs are there each year? So generally each year we do take in a sizable number. We do take in roughly just enough. Okay, we don't want to have a big balloting situation whereby a lot of parents are balloted out. That's not a situation that we want. So we do want to gauge the number that we are taking in quite carefully, and it differs from year to year. Right now, last year, we are caught a little bit off guard. Yeah, because of that sudden announcement in terms of the actual reduction of the number of places allocated in phase 2B. But for that, we already have announced to our parent volunteer last year once we received information from MOE. So our parent volunteers are aware of the risks that are involved. So going forward, right now, again, our numbers do not change that much from year to year. So likelihood, if you look at our estimation for this year, is about 30 odd parent volunteers or places for phase 2B. You'll be seeing that the number of PV that we will be taking in for subsequent years will probably be around this range, about not more than 40, I would expect. Again, we are taking slightly more because not all our parent volunteers are able to complete the 40 hours. Some actually drop out along the way. So we do take in slightly more parents, on the kind of more abundant side, to make sure that we are able to fill up all the places allocated in phase 2B. So we are looking at about 30 odd to 40. We are unlikely to take more than 40 from next batch of PV onwards. All right, so I hope that answer this question. Okay. The PV will not need to go for an interview. At this point in time, I think we go on a first come, first serve basis. So once we have enough parents who volunteer, we'll just cut off, we just end the PV, the opening of the the signing up for PV once we have enough people sign up. We usually don't have a PV interview. We don't look out for specific parents, so we really do welcome parents with all kinds of skill set. The kind of activities that we requires help from our PVs usually are not very technical, so it doesn't require special skills from our parents. Okay, so some of you have requested to go back to the PV slides. Let me see if I can, okay. Sorry, the PV slides, the briefing details, is it about the numbers? Okay, the date of the PV briefing. So, okay, let me just go back. Sorry, wait, no, this one, the 22nd of March, okay? So that's the date. And the timing is 11 o'clock to 12:30. All right, so I think that's probably about all the questions that we have today. So once again, thank you very much, parents, for spending time with us. So we'll be ending this session. Thank you very much. You can exit from this webinar. Thank you very much. Okay, one question about when the PV application will be successful. Actually, on the date itself, the 22nd, those of you who are interested, you can sign up immediately. Okay, and we of course hope that on that day we are not going to exceed the number of places that we have for our parent volunteers. So far, it has not happened yet. So you will get to know whether you are successful or not almost immediately. And if we have already exceeded, we will also let you know immediately. All right, thank you very much, parents. Okay, thank you. We'll end it from our side. Thank you very much, parents.